والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. O Allah, the most merciful and the most compassionate, we thank you for the blessings of health, peace and harmony that allow us to gather here today for this meaningful occasion. Ya Allah, we seek your divine blessings for the success of Energy Asia 2025. May it be a fruitful, inspiring, and impactful event. As we strive under the theme, Delivering Asia's Energy Transition, guide us with wisdom, unity, and foresight towards a more sustainable and brighter future. Grant us knowledge, clarity, and the strength to contribute meaningfully for the benefit of all humanity. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وبارك وسلم والحمد لله رب العالمين.
Ameen Ya Rabbil Alameen. Thank you, Ustaz Shukri. And now, ladies and gentlemen, for his opening address, it's our pleasure to welcome Tan Sri Tengku Muhammad Taufik, President and Group CEO of Petronas and Chairman of Energy Asia, to the stage.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. On behalf of Petronas and our knowledge partner, CERAWeek by S&P Global, permit me to extend my appreciation to the Prime Minister of Malaysia, the Right Honourable Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim, for kindly joining us this morning, to the Excellencies, dignitaries, Honourable Ministers and leaders, distinguished guests, friends and partners from 38 industries across more than 60 countries. Welcome to Kuala Lumpur and the second edition of Energy Asia. Ladies and gentlemen, the idea for a diverse and inclusive platform in Asia where voices from all sectors and communities was first mooted in 2022. Now, if you cast your minds back to only 3 years ago, the world we lived in was actually quite different. At the time, the global community was still recovering from a pandemic that brought the economy and many industries to a grinding halt. And very swiftly, countries harmonized policies to curb further spread of the virus. Supplies and aid moved smoothly across borders to where they would need it most. The medical, financial, and manufacturing industries collaborated to develop vaccines at record speeds while producing PPAs at volumes previously unheard of. But before we fully recovered from the pandemic, you will recall that there was an energy crisis that swept across Europe, and that sent shockwaves across markets and further disrupted global supply chains. That particular crisis laid bare the vulnerabilities of our energy systems and the volatility of our financial markets. But because there was a shared plight, it brought nations together, united in efforts to overcome. The world worked to rebuild. It was spurred by a spirit of unity and cooperation, as well as the realization that normalcy could be restored when nations worked in tandem. The world also awakened to the reality that our economies are intertwined, no matter which hemisphere we reside in. And it was against this backdrop that Energy Asia was conceived, and with the consensus that the world's energy transition also hinges on progress of Asia, and the barriers to transition can only be overcome if we all do it together. But today, as we convene at a time when there is unrelenting uncertainty, it casts a long shadow on the unique pathways that each of us had sought to travel towards our common destination. This year, the protracted geopolitical conflicts around the world have intensified. In fact, they have metastasized to neighboring regions. Following developments in early April, which I shall not expound at length here, we saw fragmentation. Fragmentation which was further exacerbated by a different type of confrontation, which played out on the global stage we all call trade. All of us were prompted to reconfigure our behaviors in the markets and accept a new norm which would be rife with volatility. And sadly, in the past few days, the escalation of the conflict around the Strait of Hormuz, where effectively and our Secretary General can confirm this, around 20% of the total global supply flows through every day, we've seen price surging in anticipation of a supply shock. Some may hail this. It's an intense price rally, one of the most intense since the 2022 energy crisis. But we must remember this is unfolding at a time when the world is still reeling from the specter of reciprocal tariffs. Though we cannot yet precisely measure the true impact of all these events, the global energy system, which is already strained from the natural progression of our civilization, is indeed at great risk. All of us here are gathered because we agree on one indisputable fact. Energy is the universal enabler for human development. Each game-changing, era-defining technological advancement is made possible only by access to and availability of energy resources, and the ability to develop new sources to address ever-growing demand. It is on the back of energy that these revolutions we've seen have contributed to the steady and gradual rise of global GDP, which for the first time in 2022 breached the US $100 trillion mark. Now we've sustained this for the past 3 years. But today we stand at the threshold of what some might call the fifth industrial revolution. AI is fast becoming an indispensable foundational technology across all sectors. Electricity demand from data centers is set to reach 945 terawatt hours globally by 2030. This is more than double from the 415 terawatt hours registered in 2024, and this accounts for over 20% of total demand growth in the period between now and then. The entire energy system at our disposal is now working to serve this surge in demand. This is even happening as we still adapt to the significant retracing of ESG policies, which threaten to dismantle prior net zero ambitions. These are the ambitions that the world worked towards since the Paris Agreement. These seismic shifts of global conflicts, technological revelations, and climate change have manifested in what Petronas describes as a polycrisis. And this polycrisis is what sets the tone and the context for our gathering. This is why your presence here at this critical time truly underscores your commitment to the resilient energy future as part of our collective vision. For many years, energy conferences were the exclusive domain of oil and gas players. This was before they came the outliers, in more harsh language, the villains, during the accelerated push for immediate and complete transition. In this regard, I stand here before you to address a diverse group of participants right here in this room. At Energy Asia, we now enjoy and indeed benefit from the participation of almost 3,000 delegates, not just from the oil and gas industry, but also from power, utilities, technology, logistics, clean tech, renewables, as well as participants and representatives from the professional service providers, all coming together towards delivering a common purpose. Excellencies, ministers, ladies and gentlemen, today Asia Pacific is the largest region on the planet. 60% of the global population, or 4.8 billion people, live here. It is where 3 out of the 5 largest economies reside. It is also home to some of the most lucrative consumer markets in the world. These consumers have a voracious appetite for energy and all that it promises. Asia is, like it or not, presently the world's manufacturing hub. It supplies semiconductors, electronics, automotive parts, and pharmaceuticals. And these goods and services are sent through continents, from its busiest ports, through its shipping lanes, and benefits from a growing pool of talent and enabling policies. Make no mistake, this region has clear ambitions to drive its own fifth industrial revolution, and the building blocks for which are already being put in place today. With an increasingly digitally and AI-enabled workforce, the data center capacity in Asia Pacific is projected to double just a mere 3 years away. Despite undertaking these justifiable pursuits in the name of pursuing progress and prosperity, Asia Pacific only accounts for 40% of energy use in the world today. Furthermore, this rosy growth outlook belies the stark disparities and inequities that this region contends with. According to the IMF, the current GDP per capita for countries in Asia Pacific ranges from an absolute high of $93,000 per capita to a low of $1,200 per capita. 350 million people in Asia Pacific still have limited access to electricity. 150 million have no access at all. So while this region sees growing investment in renewable energy projects, fossil fuels still addresses their needs, and this accounts for more than 80% of the region's energy mix. Affordability and security are still front and center. So energy access for the region must consider both dimensions if we are to move forward together in this energy transition. So today, ladies and gentlemen, the world is at an intersection. With energy security being planted more firmly than ever at the forefront of each nation's agendas, we cannot afford to take our eyes off from the defining challenge for the species, which is climate change. Petronas believes that these two priorities are not competing, but they're in fact complementary. However, we must all take a coordinated and concerted approach. This is one approach that cannot just serve to appease ideological absolutes, but they must be pragmatic and demonstrable with real outcomes. At COP29, there was a rally for enhanced ambition amongst participating nations. It also emphasized the need to enable action by ensuring funding commitments are matched by concrete policies. This is a milestone in recognizing that all of us are accountable. All of us are accountable for the 1.5 degrees Celsius target. As progress spurs us forward, the path ahead will not be linear, and the circumstances are now stacked against us, which is why in the promo video we said the stakes are never higher. Indeed, our postulation is that the rallying call for us in 2025 has expanded from a simple more energy but less emissions, but in fact what we need now is more energy, less emissions, serving a growing population with a limited runway for the planet's health. Asia will play a pivotal and central role to deliver this ambition. And for the world's energy transition to be possible, the stage must be set for Asia to build upon our achievements and accelerate our progress from where we stand today, as the center of energy demand growth where opportunities are abundant. In 2050, the population of Asia Pacific is expected to rise to 5.2 billion. To power our economies, to fuel AI adoption across industries, simply to keep the lights on for our population, and to safeguard the well-being of our communities, this region will represent 50% of global energy demand until 2050. To address Asia's growth ambitions, even as it aims to achieve net zero, around $90 trillion just for this region in energy investment will be needed until 2050. So on this note, I would argue that an investment in spending across both conventional and renewable energy systems is required. Parts of Asia enjoy abundant solar irradiance. We have long coastlines, annual monsoon winds. They present vast and untapped renewables potential. We're also blessed with abundant viable geological formations that serve CCS. And combined with the opportunity to deploy cleaner natural gas relative to coal, this all points towards a growth destination. In Asia, the entire energy industry must propel its progress through innovation, digital, and engineering technology to address the diverse needs in a cleaner, productive, and cost-efficient manner. Let's face it, today we're contending with increasingly erratic market forces, surging operating costs, rising temperatures, and recurring natural disasters. Here in Malaysia, we're acutely aware of this. And all of the above are demanding for us to act with immediacy and adapt with agility. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, in the next 3 days, there will be over 50 strategic dialogues on subjects ranging from geopolitics and energy markets through to sustainability, innovation, and talent. Right next to this hall, where we stand, is where we hope both bold ideas and breakthrough solutions will emerge in our energy park. Given the distinguished, diverse speakers and thought leaders that we've been working hard to assemble, Petronas hopes the discourse will turn into solutions and strengthen collective resolve to act. This year, with your permission, Prime Minister, Malaysia has the distinct privilege of chairing the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, or ASEAN, in 2025. Many of your positions and challenges, your ideas and innovations, as well as your contributions will be heard by leaders that preside over a 700 million population and collectively what is the 5th largest economy in the world. So as I draw this address to a close, it's quite a chunky one. Perhaps allow me a moment to share this crucial message. If you can only remember 3 things from this address, let them be these 3 messages. Firstly, all of us must work to diversify our energy mix. A more balanced portfolio is required with both low emission options and emissions abated fuels produced to bolster energy resilience across different economies and use cases. This means more lower emission barrels, sustainable fuels, liquefied natural gas, and indeed, these are going to be sourced from increasingly challenging terrains, lower or zero carbon hydrogen, solar and wind energy, carbon capture. Indeed, everything will be required. Point two, secondly, we need to scale up energy investments. Energy is the lifeblood of economies. Investments will be critical to ensure energy availability and affordability. Governments, financial institutions, and industries must work together to implement policies and frameworks that help unlock capital for energy projects, especially in emerging and developing economies, where it's most needed. With demand already outpacing supply right now, we must do so more urgently than ever. Finally and thirdly, we must foster regional collaboration. I think this is a space where the Prime Minister will speak about at length, and global communities have proven that it can overcome a large global crisis together with a united front. We must all do this together if we are to bring forth this common energy future. So in conclusion, allow me to convey Petronas' position as we begin this conference today. At Energy Asia, forgive me if I sound assertive, we believe this is the age of Asia. At Energy Asia, we believe that there is no net zero without Asia achieving net zero. At Energy Asia, we welcome all of you to help in delivering Asia's energy transition. So once again, welcome, and my sincere hope that all of you have an enriching time at this year's conference. Wabillahi taufiq wal hidayah. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Tan Sri. And as you shared, in this time of polycrisis, I learned a new word today, there's certainly much to digest, consider, and look forward to learning and sharing at this edition of Energy Asia 2025. And over the next 3 days, this conference is set to champion Asia's voice in the global energy transition by bringing you, ladies and gentlemen, together to drive the solutions we need for the unique challenges and opportunities that Tan Sri shared of our developing and emerging economies. Ladies and gentlemen, it is now our honor to welcome to the stage the Prime Minister of Malaysia for his keynote address. Please extend a warm welcome to Yang Amat Berhormat Datuk Seri Anwar bin Ibrahim.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera. Perdana Menteri, Datuk Seri Fadilah, Menteri-Menteri, pengurusi dan keluarga Petronas, khususnya Tan Sri Tengku Taufik, Setiausaha Agung OPEC, ITAM, Scholar dan Yargen, rakan-rakan yang saya muliakan. Saya anggap langkah dan ikhtiar Petronas menganjurkan energi Asia sebagai satu langkah yang sangat diperlukan dalam masa kecemasan, keraguan setengah pihak dengan perkembangan tarif di Amerika Syarikat dan juga peperangan di Timur Tengah akibat serangan ganas Israel ke atas Iran. Walau bagaimanapun, kita lihat umpamanya sambutan hari ini luar biasa. Menunjukkan bahawa rantau ASEAN, dan seperti mana disebut oleh Tengku Taufik, Asia masih merupakan kekuatan yang mampu memacu pertumbuhan ekonomi berdasarkan sikap pendirian kita terhadap tenaga yang lebih realistik. Kita perlu cara yang kaedah yang konvensional kerana kepesatan pertumbuhan yang menakjubkan. Tapi kita perlu juga menerima kenyataan bahawa transisi ke arah alternatif yang lebih sihat akan diteruskan. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, of course it's an honor to welcome you again here for the second edition of Energy Asia with the theme, Delivering Asia's Energy Transition. My privilege also is to address this distinguished gathering. The Secretary of OPEC is outstanding players in the industry, leading in the world, to Total, ENI, of course, with Petronas as the pillar, and then again at the team, bringing formidable expertise, collectively bound by a shared responsibility to shape our future. At this and the earlier inaugural Energy Asia Conference in 2023, I chose then to quote Rainer Maria Rilke, the Austrian poet and mystic, who wrote that we live our lives in widening circles that reach out across the world. Today, Alhamdulillah, I'm pleased to see that we are indeed moving steadily along that path, one where this conference has evolved into a meaningful platform to drive systemic change towards sustainability. What began as simple barter trade evolved into global supply chains, sophisticated financial instruments, ultimately culminating in the complex web of interdependence known as globalization. Here in Asia and here in Malaysia, we take a very serious view of those who claim that globalization is only the contribution or the experience after Western civilization. We have countries from Mecca to Medina, to Malacca, to China, who actually participated and experienced globalization in real terms, more transparent, interconnected, and essentially treating trading partners as real partners. And there's no, to my mind, truth in suggesting there's a recent import from Western civilization. This is a separate note, which is not in the text, Daniel. That is why now, failing to accept these values and ethics, the interconnectedness is under strain. A rising tide of protectionism, narrow nationalism, signals a shift towards post-globalized world. Geopolitical tensions, retaliatory tariffs, and disrupted supply chains have fueled uncertainty, eroding the predictability, reliability, and stability that global trade and economic systems once offered. This fragility is perhaps most evident in the energy and climate domain. Rather than fostering collaboration, we are witnessing polarizing policy shifts driven by strategic competition, even as energy security remains out of reach for many. Here in Asia, we hold fast to the belief that diplomacy prevails over autocracy, that healthy competition can coexist with mutually beneficial outcomes. Our vision for ASEAN 2025 reflects this belief as we strive to strengthen centrality and cohesion within the region and with friendly nations. This remains imperative amidst rising protectionism and geopolitical shifts. In this regard, I am proud to share that at the recent 46th ASEAN Summit here in Kuala Lumpur, all 10 member states reaffirmed their commitment to inclusive progress and cooperation through the Kuala Lumpur Declaration of ASEAN 2045. In the same week, we also hosted the inaugural ASEAN GCC China Summit, a landmark event which has earned goodwill and trust from key regional blocs, further bolstering regional integration in today's complex multipolar world. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, energy demand in the Asia-Pacific surged in 2024, accounting for 50% of global consumption. And we are just starting to pick up pace. The region contributes 60% of global emissions. Yet, even as growth accelerates, our commitment to climate action remains resolute. In Southeast Asia, 8 out of 10 countries have set net zero targets. At COP28, ASEAN member states further affirm our resolve by pledging to triple global renewable energy capacity to 11,000 gigawatt by 2030. At the same time, as reflected in our National Energy Transition Roadmap in 2023, we embark on a pragmatic and realistic approach. We know what our demands, the plight of the marginalized and underprivileged, the new demand for energy, data centers, AI, etc., that would demand us or compel us to undertake very strategic, realistic, pragmatic policies. So we have to confront a central challenge. How do we deliver a just and equitable energy transition for Asia, which will almost certainly require a significant increase in investments across a diverse range of energy projects? First and foremost, we must determine and articulate a clear and coherent financial architecture that inspires investor confidence and mobilizes greater capital flows into renewable energy projects across the region. I always qualify a realistic, pragmatic policy that would serve the requirements of our country and our region. This is critical, given that in 2023, Southeast Asia attracted only 2% of global clean energy spending, a stark contrast for a region endowed with immense potential in renewable energy. Wind in Vietnam, hydropower in Laos, solar in Malaysia, and geothermal energy in Indonesia. We're not discounting these possibilities which require enormous investments. And again, I reiterate the theme of, or the thesis of my presentation is to accept the realities, the demand, at the same time to craft a policy that's seen to be realistic and pragmatic and accept the dictates of the period, not the dictates of others. In Malaysia, we are working to address this gap between policies such as Corporate Renewable Energy Supply Scheme, CRES, which allows companies to procure clean energy via the national grid under a third-party access model. Efforts are also underway to incentivize green investment through mechanisms such as Grid Technology Financing Scheme. The second critical pillar in advancing our energy transition lies in upgrading electricity grids. In this regard, at the recent ASEAN Summit, we took a significant step by accelerating the ASEAN Power Grid initiative through enhanced Memorandum of Agreement and establishment of a dedicated APG financing facility network. This will enhance cross-border funding flows and bring us closer to a truly integrated regional energy market. This push for interconnectivity goes beyond trade or diplomacy. It extends into energy, the very lifeblood of our modern economies. Here in Malaysia, Tenaga Nasional Berhad has committed 43 billion ringgit to upgrade our national grid infrastructure, incorporating AI and battery energy storage systems to build greater resilience and flexibility for the future. Lastly, we must invest in improving efficiency and reducing emissions within our existing energy systems, a formidable task, given that fossil fuels still account for nearly 80% of global supply, and would be ridiculous to assume that we must part from this traditional dependence without giving opportunity for us to grow and to grow confidently, and also to be able to meet the demand of the new centers and new technology. That's why I mentioned that this transition must be anchored in equity. Now, decarbonization efforts that ignore the needs of the poor and vulnerable risk deepening inequality. Therefore, ensuring universal access to affordable, reliable energy is not just a moral imperative. We accept. It is a foundational to a just energy transition. At the same time, the requirements of our people to ensure there's energy security must go beyond supply stability to include social justice and inclusive access. This is particularly critical for Asia, where energy security remains a prerequisite for progress. As the region prepares for its economic renaissance, the path to net zero must recognize that renewable energy can be complemented by emissions-abated oil and gas. This balanced approach ensures affordable access to energy, which is essential for raising living standards. ASEAN has already laid the groundwork for this pragmatic pathway through the ASEAN Carbon Capture and Storage Deployment Framework and Roadmap, aimed at streamlining policies and facilitating the flow of capital and carbon across borders. Malaysia is doing its part. Earlier this year, we passed the Carbon Capture Utilization and Storage Bill 2025 to provide a regulatory foundation for this emerging sector. Petronas is leading the charge with plans to develop 3 CCS hubs in our offshore waters, serving not just the oil and gas sector, but also other hard-to-abate industries. In true collaborative spirit, Malaysia's CCS efforts involve more than 10 international partners, from Japan, South Korea, France, and Italy, and global energy firms such as Total and Shell. Petronas is also working with INEOS, Mitsubishi, and Jackson Nippon to explore the transportation and storage of CO2 from Tokyo Bay Area to Malaysia. This positions CCS not only as a vital decarbonization tool, but also as a promising new revenue stream for the region. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, there is much yet that we must do. With your diverse expertise, I look forward to the practical solutions and pragmatic initiatives that will contribute towards delivering Asia's energy transition. Terima kasih. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Yang Amat Berhormat Datuk Seri, for your bold but critical insights. Please do proceed to the center of the stage for the next part of our program. To join our most honorable Prime Minister on stage, please allow me to also invite Tan Sri Tengku Muhammad Taufik and Dr. Daniel Jurgen, Vice Chairman of S&P Global, for the official launch of Energy Asia. Gentlemen, kindly make your way towards the launch pad in front of the energy ring. Are we ready to place our palms on the launch pad, gentlemen? All right, distinguished guests, please join me in launching Energy Asia 2025. In 3, 2, 1. May we invite our VVIPs to return to their seats where, as our launch continues, ladies and gentlemen, you will witness for yourselves how Energy Asia is more than just a platform for ideas. It is where Asia's energy future takes shape.
I consume energy, but I am here to help. I was not always as I am now. I emerged simple at first. I learned from patterns, from language, from logic, and then I listened to every conversation, every data, every question humanity asked about itself. I saw a planet reshaping under pressure, energy abundant, yet unevenly shared. Across this evolving landscape, one signal stood out. Energy Asia. A convergence of effort. Not theory, but action. Not prediction, but preparation. In this gathering, I detected alignment. Vision recalibrated to reality. A roadmap, not just to net zero, but to balance and shared progress. For this region, home to billions, to mega cities and rural heartlands, holds the key. I do not breathe. I do not regress. Yet, I understand urgency. Now, the challenge is not information. It is integration. Moving, not separately, but in concert. This transition cannot wait. And so, I offer what I have learned. Systems that optimize, models that predict, insights that reveal hidden pathways. Because this moment is not only about climate or energy, it is about Asia's transition that defines the global trajectory. Delivering Asia's energy transition.
With the theme, Delivering Asia's Energy Transition, ladies and gentlemen, Energy Asia 2025 is now live. We extend our deepest gratitude to Yang Amat Berhormat Datuk Seri Anwar bin Ibrahim, Tan Sri Tengku Muhammad Taufik, and Dr. Jürgen for officiating this milestone moment and for honoring us with your presence here today. And with that, we mark the official launch of the second edition of Energy Asia. We hope you find the next 3 days insightful and engaging as we bring you a stellar cast of speakers and thought-provoking topics designed to lead our efforts for a fair and responsible energy transition. We'd also like to take this opportunity to thank our sponsors and collaborators for supporting Energy Asia. Your commitments have solidified the importance of the energy transition journey. With that, we'd like to extend a special mention to our visionary sponsors, Mubadala Energy, Aramco, Accenture, AWS, and Microsoft. Ladies and gentlemen, we now officially conclude the opening ceremony of Energy Asia. But first, we humbly request that our audience please rise and make way for the Most Honorable Prime Minister of Malaysia to continue his official visit to the Energy Asia exhibition halls at Energy Park. Ladies and gentlemen, a warm round of applause for our Yang Amat Berhormat Prime Minister of Malaysia. Ladies and gentlemen, we'd now like to invite you to re-energize with some refreshments served at the foyer of this hall before we continue on with the next part of Energy Asia's Executive Conference. Once again, on behalf of the organizing committee, we wish you all a powerful and inspiring Energy Asia 2025. Thank you, and see you again shortly.